a leader and a teacher, you're measured by these souls that are stewarded to you. Well, on the breakfast table, it's unavoidable. You're going to be a teacher, and you're going to be a leader, whether you want it to or not. And there are souls that are stewarded to you, and what you do with those souls is what you're going to be measured by.
If you told guys they could play in the NFL, be a Navy SEAL, be very successful in business, make millions of dollars, or they can have a functional family, most guys would really hesitate on that answer. Today, I hang out with my friend Clint Bruce. That's really what we're doing in these conversations is I'm inviting my friends out there in the podcast world with my friends in the world that I live in. And so we're going to talk to my friend Clint Bruce, who has had a lot of success out there and things that seem to matter to the world. We're going to talk about the athletic field or the ball field, the battlefield, and the boardroom. But all those things, and Clint's had great success in all of them, being a man who played at Navy and then in the NFL for a while, was a Navy SEAL in our armed services. Now he's a CEO of a couple of companies. But we're going to talk about where all men, all people spend most of their life. We say it's the longest map. It's where you're spending more time getting from here to there. It's at the breakfast table, which is just a metaphor for your relationships in life. So I'm glad you're with us. I think you're going to really be encouraged by my conversation with my friend. I hope it makes you a better friend to others and at your breakfast table. You know, the whole idea behind this podcast is to get you, my new friends, to be with some of my old friends. And so on the very first time that we're sitting here to talk and invite you into the conversation, I want to bring my friend Clint Bruce on. This is where the crowd, one day there'll be a live studio audience,
That's right,
applauds and goes, "What's up, folks?"
Hey, people. What's up, people?
Ladies and gentlemen, Clint Bruce.
It's good to be here. It's exciting to be here. It's exciting to see the things you're doing and always continue to do as a guy who's been impacted by you and your ministries. And for a guy, I like standing in the wake of people who make me better. And you're definitely one of those. So being a part of this is really fun.
Well, why don't we tell people how we met? All right?
Yeah.
Because how many years has it been now? And it really is hard for me to go back and remember.
It was the weekend after I came back. I mean, I remember I came back, I redeployed out of the military theater and met my 7-month-old daughter for the first time. She was born while I was overseas. Came home and Amy goes, "Hey, we're going to go to this church in Watermark." And I said, "I don't want to go there." She goes, "Why not?" I said, "Well, that's where all the pretty people go." And she's like, "Well, your wife and your daughter are going to this church."
Which is good for you because that means they're pretty.
Well, and what happened is I went there, and it's stunning to me how often I hear this. Like, I was getting increasingly mad that first Sunday. One, I'd just come back from overseas and just was in a rough place to begin with.
Yeah, we should tell people real quick. Like you said, I came back like from being institutionalized. No, in your case, right?
Yeah.
You were serving this institution called America, and you were part of a SEAL team.
I was in the special operations community, and for context, I grew up in Garland, born in Arkansas, moved to Garland, played football at the Naval Academy, played briefly in the NFL, went off to the special operations community, came home. And that first Sunday was one of these, I was increasingly mad as I sat there because I felt like she had told you I was coming and that you were just talking to me. I'm like, man, this is an ambush. But I had this affection for things that hurt. So I was like, I got to, you got to go where it hurts, right? And so we just plugged in there. And this was in 2000. Late 2000, might have been 2004, beginning of 2004.
Wow.
And that's when the relationship started. And I remember just knowing that it's like, for me, it was like going to a gym where you're going to have to work to keep up with everybody, joining a team where you're not the best, you don't know that you'll ever be. But it's just, you got to go where it hurts a little. And I loved the kind of hurt that I got when I went to Watermark as a guy who's just, and being led by guys like you and Kyle and some of the other folks and just, I was always around coaches who knew I didn't have the margin of talent, so they just told me the truth. And being around that was an environment I was used to. It was an environment where I knew if I was going to get better, that's the only environment it happens in. So yeah,
all right, let me ask you a quick 2000s. Question. You just said something that was really insightful, right? You said you were around men that made you better, and part of what you said made you better is that you were around guys that you didn't have the margin to create all the talent you needed to perform at the level you want to perform, so they just told you the truth.
Yeah.
What was it about you? Because so many people out there, they want to excel. I don't know anybody that just goes, "Hey, my goal is to be average."
Right.
Right? But that's kind of what guys settle for because, A, they don't have any idea how to get to being more than average. Right? But so what was it about you, though, when guys did tell you the truth, that you were ready to respond to it?
Well, one, I'm never a victim. Like I'm always where I think I need to be. So if you're in a hard place and someone tells you the truth, well, they didn't draft you that hard place. You chose to go there in the first place. So if someone hurts your feelings in SEAL training, like they didn't sign you up. They didn't raise your hand. I mean, like you wanted to be there. If a coach tells you a hard thing, he didn't make you play football, right? And so I've always been in an environment where, I've never been talented enough for anything to be easy. And I've always been really intentional about what I try to do. So you've heard me say this. I jokingly call myself the achieving average. I'm an achieving average, but I'm not an average achiever. And what I tell people is like, my gift is not being gifted, right? Like when you're the fifth string fullback in 8th grade at Brandenburg Middle School, and there are 3 other fullbacks, like you got to come to grips. And they're
going to take the tight end who's not on the depth chart and put him there before we get to you at 5.
They printed it up that way in the program. So my mom and dad are like 1, 2, 3, blank, 5. And they're like, why did they put a blank there? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I thought that was rude too, right?
Guys that aren't prepping to play fullback will do better than you.
They're basically saying we're going to shift our whole offensive strategy before we put Clint in. And but so I decided really early while I was going to play the game. I wasn't going to be famous. But I tell people my gift is not being gifted because I got to know why I do anything. Because I got to understand the process and the system in order to hang. So, for me, I've never had the margin that talent just gives you. So I've always surrounded myself with people who love me enough to tell me the truth. And on the ball field, on the battlefield, in the boardroom, in the breakfast table, that's just the company I've always liked to keep. I'd love to tell you it was virtuous. There's a part of it that's become that, but a lot of it was just out of necessity. And so finding that in my faith after my service was really important to me because I knew that was how I'd done anything prior to that in the first place. So,
all right, buddy. See, I know you so well, and we've had some of these conversations in private for so long. But you just listed off 3 things. I know that you talk about a lot where you want to excel.
Yeah.
Right. You said the ball field, the battlefield,
the boardroom, and the breakfast table.
The breakfast table is 4, not 3. Okay,
yeah.
good. Because I thought I missed. I was going to say the breakfast table. I didn't hear the first time you went through the list this time. But the breakfast table. Let's just define. I think we know what ball field and battlefield 100%. And boardroom is. But tell everybody. Let's start with that one because I think I don't care how much success you have on the ball field or battlefield or the boardroom. If you are a failure at the breakfast table, all those other things are going to leave you pretty.
Well, that's the map that matters most. Like for me, those are the maps that I found myself on by design. As a young man, and I think it's the maps that we can all find ourselves on. For me, the ball field is literally my time as an athlete. The battlefield is literally my time, in the military. The boardroom is my time as a business. And the breakfast table, is the map we find ourselves on for the entirety of our lives. Like we're born onto a breakfast table, and then we build this breakfast table. And for me, the breakfast table in my mind is this, it's like the opening map on Google Maps. And the ball field and the battlefield and the boardroom are just layers that you toggle on top of this. And for me, I will always try to find people to chase. I kind of have this simple chase, pace, pull mentality. And for me, the discernment between who I chase is like, hey, are you only good at one map? If you're good on the boardroom, if you're in the high ground on the boardroom, but you're trash at the breakfast table, I don't want to learn from you. So I can find someone who's good at both. If you're good at the battlefield, but you're trash at the breakfast table. So for me, that breakfast table has always been the companion of any of the other maps that you're looking for someone on, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're learning from someone who's not good at the breakfast table, you do it in isolation and partition.
And so listen, for guys like you out there that are listening, let's just be explicit about what breakfast table is. It's your home life. It's a metaphor for 100%. Everything about where you're going to spend most of your time.
100%. It's how good men ultimately measure themselves in their performance. It's the map that matters.
I love to say to people that no man will ever rise above the opinion of his kids.
100%.
Right? 100%. And so I got 6.
Yeah.
You got 3. I'm split right down the middle. 3 guys, 3 girls. Right? You've got
3 girls.
Yeah. You have a women's ministry.
Because why not? Like, why wouldn't I raise women?
You lead a women's ministry.
Like, I'm built for it. Apparently. So I spend most of my days just confounded.
You look like most women's ministers that
I don't understand what's happening. The whole concept of synchronization is a whole deal I don't want to get into. But I've been more scared at home than I have in most other places. And I just sit in my front. I was like, I don't want to go in right now. Like,
you just went to synchronization, which I think went over most people's head. And had I not brought it back up, you might have got away with it.
Anybody has a house full of women, they know what it is.
Amy's going to listen to this, and she's going to say you had to bring that up.
I'm sorry.
We're 5 minutes into this thing.
Once again, in our 26 years of marriage, I'm sorry. I'll try to do better. I won't make promises, but I'll try.
All right. So
the breakfast table is that dominant map by which I think we should all measure ourselves, and it's where the souls that we were assigned are going to be ultimately measured. God, be careful when you say you want to be a leader, because here's what it means to be a leader and a teacher. And as a leader and a teacher, you're measured by these souls that are stewarded to you. Well, on the breakfast table, it's unavoidable. You're going to be a teacher. You're going to be a leader, whether you want it to or not. If you are going to be a mom, you're going to be a dad. You're going to be a husband. You're going to be a wife. you are a leader. And there are souls that are stewarded to you, and what you do with those souls is what you're going to be measured by. So for me, it's the map of ultimate consequence. And it's also the map of ultimate satisfaction. Man, there's nothing I've ever done that is...
Yeah, how many guys do we know that don't believe that? Right? I mean, because honestly, if you told guys they could play in the NFL and be a Navy SEAL, be very successful in business, make millions of dollars, or they can have a functional family, most guys would really hesitate on that answer.
I'll tell you what, the ones that would agree with them are the ones that had done all those three things.
Yeah.
And been on the other side of it.
That's right.
And been like, hey, I was that. I realized what it wasn't. Like my office downtown, for me, I called it, it's an apex predator watering hole for broken mighty men and rich young rulers. Yeah. Both of us on the other side of what we thought God was, right?
Yeah. So tell everybody just about your boardroom. We're right here, so let's just stay in it.
Yeah.
So where's this apex watering hole? It's
downtown Dallas. Downtown Dallas. We call it the High Ground. It's a co-working facility for veteran and athlete-led companies, men and women that have been at the highest levels of the ball field and battlefield who are now trying to figure out what this boardroom is. Yeah. So they could be at the breakfast table who they said they'd be when they said they'd do, or who they want to be when that season of life comes upon them, right?
Name of the company that...
Yeah, so TRG is the global security company. Holdfast is a leadership and team development company, and Windage is a sports and human performance company. And all those really are is if you distill the hard skills and soft skills and experiences that you gain on the ball field and battlefield and package them up, the most appropriate ones, that's what those companies do. They just, TRG is the hard skills, being able to protect those entrusted to you. Holdfast is the kind of neck up performance. Like, what are the truths that you learn in the special operations community and on the battlefield that matter on these other maps? And Windage is really kind of from the neck down. Like, hey man, how do I steward this single issue performance system that God gave me in a way that allows me to do it for a really long time, right? But, I look at the High Ground, our facilities like an iPhone, and all these brands are apps that allow me to distribute what we're most proud of and confident as we leave the ball field and the battlefield. Yeah. And that's Proverbs 22:29. Proverbs 22:29 is, you see a man excellent in his work, he'll not speak for small, nor speak for kings. So, hey, how do I earn?
Let's just slow that down.
Yeah.
Because that's good truth.
Yeah, Proverbs 22:29.
What he does.
You see a man skilled at his work.
He will not stand before obscure men. He will stand before kings. It's a verse that I constantly would tell my kids. Like, listen, you don't have to want to be great. Just pursue faithfulness and greatness. Faithfulness is success. And if you're great at what you do, kings are going to want great men around them.
I mean, look at Daniel. Right? That's why I love Daniel. I love Joseph. I mean, Daniel, the king's like, everybody doesn't worship me. I want to kill you, except for you, Daniel. You're the only one that knows how to work the Excel spreadsheet, so you're cool. Stay in your room, though, right? I mean, excellence allows you to, and I remember when I told you this at the very beginning, you and Wimberly, I said, I want to be so good at what I do that people go, what's different about you? And then I've earned the right to tell them who.
Well,
there's no what.
And the reason, Clint, I love spending time with you and around you is because obviously, well, first of all, as a man that, is looking to reproduce myself, these things which I've heard in the presence of many witnesses, these I'm supposed to entrust to faithful men who will teach others also. And so part of faithful men, many man proclaims his faithfulness, but who can find a trustworthy man? And so one of the things I just always appreciate about you is that you wanted the truth.
Yeah.
Right? You know what I mean? You said, hey, listen, don't waste my time telling me how great I am or how great I've been. Yeah. Don't want to be around me because of my battlefield or my battlefield, my ball field or my battlefield. I want you to help me be the man that I want to be just all the time. And so I saw that faithfulness in you.
I didn't want to be anybody's pet seal because Amy and the girls don't care. Like I say this in one of my bios when I go and speak. The final line is, Clint lives in Dallas, Texas with his college sweetheart and his 3 daughters who do not care that he played football or was a Navy SEAL. Yeah. And everybody laughs about it. And it's kind of funny, but it's also for me like a subtle jab.
You start to teach right there, even in the way you're introduced.
Yeah.
Right? And so I do, what I love is, again, would you say you're achieving average? Like you work hard.
I'm an achieving
just
average.
To be average. And we had that conversation, right? Because guys that have paid some attention anyway, now with that, what was that very first Discovery show that kind of showed people what a Buds class was like?
Oh, yeah, Buds class 234.
234, right? Yeah. Infamous, right, with Steve Holly and those other guys. Yeah. But we all watched what they went through, and the very first thing I asked you is, dude, how'd you run that mile in the time, right? And
Lean forward till you're about to fall over, then don't. Any big man that's watching this, like, here's a secret. Here's a secret to big man running. Lean forward until you're about to fall over, then don't.
and don't fall over.
It's just a gravity-assisted completion. Like, you don't look cool, but you make the times. It works, right? I mean, look at me.
But I mean, and that was the thing, it was a commitment to not quit, right?
Yeah. I was going to die or quit, and they get in trouble if I die.
Yeah.
So,
And it wouldn't bother you anymore.
which is perhaps not the way you should introduce yourself to your instructors. Like, I'm going to make it, or I'm going to die, and y'all get in trouble if I die. So let's go. And they're like, is this really how you want to introduce yourself to us? And I was like, and my classmate that played football with me at the Naval Academy is in the back. He's like, you're so dumb. You're so dumb. You just say stupid stuff all the time. And we got beat pretty good that first one. But yeah, I mean, that's my whole deal is, and the other thing I love about this concept called the achieving average is it just really stabs a needle in the heart of talent. Talent's real, but it's only 1/3 of the equation. And what I've always said, and what I tell the girls, like, hey, it takes angles and allies and advantages to do anything that matters, right? And talent's an advantage, treasure's an advantage. But if that's all you have, and I've got angles and allies, I'm going to win. Now, the amazing thing is what happens when someone kind of masters their craft and they really understand the angles of their craft, and then they cultivate allies around them that tell them the truth and know their roles, and then you slap advantages on top of that, that's a formidable person.
Okay,
right?
which is why we have that nonstop training amongst our special forces. But let's even just go back a little bit and talk about angles and allies just for a second. Because at first it doesn't make sense to people, but I've been with you in a few shooting rooms where you were showing me that I had no clue about angles. And
you did. You just got to pull them from the bow. What's cool is I tell people, like, you already know how to do this. You know how to do it on the ball field. We're just bringing it on the battlefield. Because if you know how to chest pass a basketball, you know how to position yourself for a gunfight.
But angles means knowing where you're supposed to be and taking advantage of the environment and understanding, angles. What's a synonym for angles?
Well, in any application of your craft, if you're an insurance salesman, if you're a hedge fund trader, if you're whatever, like, understanding your craft and seeking excellence inside that craft, like the reduction of all inefficiencies, the ability to do more with less for longer. Like, for me, it doesn't really matter what map you're on. A pro pursues excellence in that craft, right? And, the thing about nature teaches us a lot. I mean, God gave us such an amazing classroom. But a lion looks lazy till it's coming at you. And you're like, oh, that's the scariest thing I've ever seen. I've been in the water with sharks. Sharks look lazy until they're being a shark. And you're like, oh. Well, what apex predators know is they're going to have to ascend into this perfect version of what they're built to do, and they never know when. So they're constantly in a state of optimization so they can ascend for that burst, right? I'm going to have to take my prey to defend my pride, and I never know when. So I've got to constantly optimize. And angles are understanding how to optimize your craft. So you can be better, longer, faster than anybody else when you have to.
So angles, you're talking about in like when you're clearing a room. That's what you mean by angles.
Yeah.
Okay. And so let's just do this for a second, because most guys will never, or gals watching this, will never be in a spot where they've got to clear a room.
Ideally. I would hope not. And if you are, we have to talk about decision making.
And you probably have new clients down there at the higher ground.
Hey, why do you keep finding yourself in a gunfight? Let's talk about that. Right?
But let's you and I talk for a second about what are some angles, to optimize in my environment and learn things that would help people, specifically where most guys are going to be, because very few guys, everybody will be in the boardroom, but let's leave that alone for a second. Let's focus on angles at the breakfast table.
Man, I love that, because that's the map of most consequence, right? And so for me, that angles, whichever map you're on, it applies, right? If you're at the boardroom, there's someone done it the way you want to do it, and you learn from them, and that's why I kind of have this high ground. The high ground for me is where you always want to be on any map that matters. And the way to get to the high ground is very simple. I mean, it's very easy, but it's not simple, because you got to get out of your own way. And the way I say it, the way you get to the high ground on any map is you find and follow the right people to the right places. You become your version of what you love about them. And so we were joking about this out in the hallway as a guy who didn't have a father. My father died when I was young. And I would remember I would watch as we were leaving church, I'd watch for men that seemed to have a relationship with their daughters that were my daughter's age or were a little bit older than my daughters. And I'm like, man, how do they do that? Like, I don't have the margin of error. Like, how can I learn from him what he had to learn the hard way, right? Mm-hmm. And there's a cool thing about being in a church that loves Jesus is people are really free with their scars, right? And I always love being around people who know more than me, because I think remembering's faster than learning. And I tell people, like, if you and I are fighting and I'm remembering and you're learning, I'm going to win, because remembering's faster than learning.
Yeah.
And that's part of the allies piece is like when you're around people that tell you the truth, you're going to gain angles faster because they're going to tell you what they had to learn the hard way. And on the breakfast table for me, I was watching people who seemed to have marriages that were what I wanted for Amy and I, that were fathers that I wanted to be for the girls. And I was really fortunate to find that in abundance, and not just where we were going to church, but by design and all these other places I went to.
And you did. You sought out guys that you had watched clear rooms effectively.
100%.
Right? And I mean, that's why one of the reasons I love being with you is, A, you're pretty good at telling stories. You got all these little...
Some of them are true.
Some of them are true. You got all these little funny acronyms and things that you say, and that's part of just kind of, your past. When you're in locker rooms and on battlefields, guys learn to talk like that, and you are especially gifted with the tongue. But one of the things I always appreciate about you, Clint, is you're always trying to learn. If you thought somebody had something to give you, you were asking questions, and you said, make me better. Help me figure out the angle here, right? And so one of the things I love to tell people is there's an old phrase that says, wise men learn more from fools than fools do from wise men, because while wise men will learn from the mistakes of fools, fools will never learn from the wisdom of the wise.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so...
And they won't even learn from their own mistakes.
They won't,
A dog returns his vomit.
That's right. One rebuke to a wise man is like 100 blows to a fool, the Proverbs say. Right? And so, but one of the things I appreciated is that, you got this wonderful self-deprecating humor. Everybody's way too young to know who Rodney Dangerfield is. Do you know who Rodney Dangerfield is?
I know Rodney Dangerfield is.
Well,
100%. You get no respect.
You get no respect, right? But there's something that everybody loves about Rodney Dangerfield because he has this self-deprecating humor, and you carry that same thing. Right? I mean, let's just be honest. Like, you mock your talent, and you mock the fact that you lean forward so far and then you just didn't fall over and whatnot. But there's a skill set here that we
listen, let me elaborate a bit on that. Like, I've never been the most talented person in the room. So when measured against my peers,
and I would say that holds true today.
Yeah, by design. Like
no, a joke.
But by design, I'm going to deliberately disadvantage myself and be around people that I got to work hard to keep up with. So yeah, I mean, I had some talent, but it wasn't enough to do it without learning from somebody, right? And so I think that
no, Clint, but you have a ton of talent, bro. I mean, you're a gifted speaker, right? You're affable. I mean, which is a crazy word, but I mean, you people love to be around you, right? So, Jungle Book. You know any characters in Jungle Book?
Little Baloo.
Yeah, you're Baloo, man. Everybody loves to bounce on Baloo's belly.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, have you?
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah,
right? And so you're just kind of a gentle giant, and so and that's a nature that God's given you, but you've cultivated it, and and I mean, you're a blast to be with, and what makes you not just fun to be with, but you know how to clear rooms.
Yeah.
And now you're one of those guys. I know that other guys are coming to and say, hey, we've all been through all these kind of crazy things, but your girls largely still love you.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit. Let me just get real practical here for a second.
Yeah, because that's the map that matters most.
It is the math that matters most. And so we were talking a little bit ago, it just kind of came up, where we were just talking about supply lines, right? And we were talking about reps.
Yeah.
And we were talking about 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
So let's just go through those three things, because this is what really the idea of this is just to invite friends into our conversation. Yeah. So let's talk about, when you talk about supply chain.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you mean when we haven't used it here.
Yeah.
But when you talk about supply chain, what do you mean in that early part of our conversation?
One, let me affirm kind of what you're saying. If there's a place that you want to be strong in your life, if you're going to make any kind of difference in the world, it better be the breakfast table, because that's what you're going to fall back to. And you're okay with the world hating you when you go back home to a wife and children that loves you. That's your strong point. That's your Alamo. That's the Phocian wall. That's Thermopylae. That's all these other things, right? So if you get one map right, let it be the breakfast table. And then that affords you to be bold and audacious and aggressive on these other maps as well. But for me, one of the things I was talking about is just learning from other people. And I remember I was with an NFL team a few years ago, and they had a really great football player, and he was a fantastic tight end. And I remember he was about to become a dad. And he goes, Clint, how do I make sure I'm as good a father as I'm a tight end? And I said, well, what are the reps? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, there's a supply chain of performing as a tight end. Your stance, your steps, receiving round reps in the gym. And what happens, you iterate those steps and continue them until you can perform under pressure. Every role that we have in our life has a supply chain. And no one can say they don't know how to be a good father.
And so by supply chain, just I think
is the ingredients to perform the ingredients to perform this role.
I've got to get these things here on time, otherwise I can't produce this.
The supply chain for driving is finding your keys, remembering where your car is, putting the key in the ignition, turning it, or pressing the button like they do these days. It's the steps that are iterated prior to the completion of an event and a role is what it is. And so for me, I was telling him, I was like, well, what are the supply chains to being a great dad? Like, what are the steps? And for me, I was kind of a new father at the time, and Amy and I've been married for a while, and I remember it's kind of one of the things where sometimes as a leader, you're answering a question that you're hearing the answer to for the first time yourself. You're kind of extemporaneously saying, that's
right.
pretty good.
I always tell people, you really want to learn something, teach.
Yeah, I probably ought to do this too, right? And I remember flying home, and I was like, well, there's 10,000. What are these things that make you a great father? And do 10,000 of each one of those things, right? Just like getting in the gym. People ask me all the time, I was like, how do you bench? How do you get good at bench press? I'm like, bench press. How do you do more pull-ups? I'm like, do pull-ups.
People ask me all the time, Ted, how do I learn my Bible? Like,
read the Bible.
Are you reading it?
Yeah,
read
the Bible.
I mean, and are you asking people questions when you come across things you don't understand?
Yeah. How do you get better at swimming? Swim.
You get in the water.
You got to do the thing, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I remember I went home and I was like, I'm going to be an elite daddy. I'm going to be the elite husband, and I'm going to do 10,000 things an elite husband does. And I remember going up to Amy, and I said, babe, I'm going to be the lead husband. I'm going to do 10,000 things an elite husband does. And I don't know if I've done 10,000 things. She said, you haven't. I'm like, hold on. I wasn't asking you. I was saying perhaps maybe, right? I said, but you measure what matters and you count what counts. And the problem I have with this 10,000 hour, 10,000 repetitions rule is typically we only apply it to our passions and our professions. We apply it on the boardroom or the ball field, the battlefield, but we don't apply it to the breakfast table. And what a stunning oversight that is. And so for me, I knew I could. Did I make 10,000 tackles? Yeah. Practice games, visualize. I make 10,000 shots. Yeah. As a business person, 10,000. Yeah. As a husband, I couldn't say that I'd done 10,000 things that a good husband does. I didn't have these reps. I didn't have a workout. So I remember going to Amy and like, hey, here's 5 things an elite husband does, and this has got to stay free to do this. And I said, I'm going to take you on a 3-day trip once a quarter. And I started listing these things, and she thought it was cool. She's like, these are for me. I go, yeah. She goes, should I tell you what they are? I'm like, probably. Like, that makes a lot of sense, right? And she goes, listen, I'd love to go on a 3-day trip, but can you just like not be a jerk when you come home from work sometimes? And I'm like, don't be jerk. Like, it's way cheaper, right? I could totally do that.
Yeah.
But she gave me these 5 things that were infinitely achievable, and I just started stacking. But
you know
reps.
what? Most of them, right, were what you do day by day.
What I'm supposed to do day by day.
Right.
We want to. I mean, listen, Tony Gwynn's in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
And all he did was get on first base, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we have all these guys that have tried to get in the Hall of Fame by swinging for the fences, but Tony Gwynn's there first ballot as fast as anybody else, right? And I tell people, it's like, man, if you're great at the extraordinary but not good at the everyday, you're not going to make it very far. What's going to happen is you got to wait for an extraordinary to be great, or you create extraordinary so you can be great, right? And that's like if all.
But here's the thing, man. People ask me, sometimes, Todd, what are the keys to being a successable parent? And I've got them. I mean, I finally sat down one day and just go, okay, here are your angles.
And you got some evidence too,
right?
by the way.
By the grace of God, yes. And what I would say is the very first thing you got to do is you got to have a plan. Mm-hmm. Like, what's your plan? Like, nobody's going to be a CEO of a company. Nobody's going to lead a mission unless you know what your plan is.
Yeah, you're not accidentally going to be in the NFL.
And most guys,
you're not accidentally be successful.
No. And you don't accidentally have kids that love you and a wife that you're still married to, where there's a relationship and it's not just one of a mutual toleration.
That's right.
And I like, it's so interesting how failed so many marriages are, even within professed Christendom. And it's like guys go, I've never cheated on her. I go, that's not the goal.
That's not a plan.
Right? It's not to not get divorced.
I didn't die on the way to work today. That's not a plan.
Right. The plan is for you guys to grow together in love and intimacy and affection for each other.
Right.
And not even to raise healthy kids. That's a byproduct of being what you should be. That's that whole child-centered parenting, which is why now there's what's called there's a really spike, I don't know if you know this or not, in what they call gray divorce, right? Like what's gray divorce? And it's what's the new Bachelor show coming out, right? The Golden Bachelor, right?
I don't know. Yeah,
yes, you do, because I know you applied and just couldn't get in.
I don't want to talk about it.
Okay, let's leave it alone.
It's a little emotional.
But I think there's this thing called the Golden Bachelor. Somebody just told me about it. But there's a thing called gray divorce, which is there are people that have made it through the first 25, 30, 40 years. And then they're divorcing.
Got it. Yeah.
Why? Because their mission was to raise kids, not divorce, not cheat on each other, but it wasn't to cultivate a healthy relationship.
So the kids grew up around undivorced parents
instead
of married parents. Right?
Exactly. Undivorced.
And I say that as an observation, not as a judgment, right? But my deal is like serendipity is not a strategy. Yeah. Serendipity is a great swim buddy, but it's not a strategy.
So the plan. So Amy gave you a plan, right? She just said, "Hey, and if this is for me, I had to tell you what those things are."
I'll tell you what they are.
Because so many guys are like, "Yeah, I'll take you on a trip once a quarter," and the wife goes, "I don't want you to be a jerk for a quarter and then take me on a trip. Man. I don't want you to buy me flowers on Valentine's Day."
100%.
Right? I mean, how about be my Valentine?
Yeah. And what I found is each one of these roles in my life, when I ask them, the things they're asking me to do are incredibly realistic, and they're ultimately achievable. And it's again, it's resist the urge to make it extraordinary, just be great at the everyday, right? And when it comes to fatherhood, people go, is it quantity versus quality? Is it quantity or quality? I'm like, it's both. It's when you can get quantity, you get quantity. When you can get quality, you get quality. Time is relative. As absolute as time is measured consistently and absolutely. It's experienced completely differently.
Yeah.
So getting 5 minutes with my 5-year-old daughter was easy. Getting 5 minutes with my 15-year-old daughter, it's different.
Yeah.
Still 5 minutes.
Because now she's got a life. She has keys.
100%.
She goes where she wants. She's got commitment she's got to be at. She plays in the volleyball team.
So then I got quality here.
Right.
But it's a plan. My plan is like, what context am I in? Do I get quantity or do I get quality? Do I find ways to get both? Do I get quantity in mind for the quality?
Yeah, but I want to say this
But it's by
too.
design.
Right, it is by design. And one of the things I will say, because you're right, it's the myth of quality time really screwed a lot of guys up, right? Because I don't care how much quality time you have, learn to clear a room, you got to get reps.
Got to do it.
And then this is where I want to get back to where I was in a second ago, but I mean, I tell people all the time, man, kids and wives, they spell love, Time.
Yeah.
Right? And you just got to put the time in.
And the other thing why I love that you're saying that is I've seen guys choose quantity of time as an excuse to not have a plan. Well, I'm just going to be there.
Right.
Well, just being there without any design or plan by default.
Yeah, so like during Buds, they just have you on a beach?
No, you got to do stuff
Well,
while you're
plan,
there.
right?
So, and sometimes I see guys avoiding work or avoiding tasks and all these other things to just want to be there. I'm like, well, man, you're just trying to get out of work, right? You're trying to not do the hard stuff and veil it as, well, I'm there. I'm like,
okay, so you had something, and I've seen this in you before, but you pulled it back out, I think, because we were in another conversation with somebody else out there before we jumped in here, and we started talking about, I think we were talking about that friend of yours with Arizona that, that you had told about being a young dad, and you were just talking about, hey, this is your supply line. This is your reps.
Yeah.
Right? And then you pulled out an app. Get your app out real quick.
Yeah, I got it right here.
And you have an app. Did you create this app?
No, it's just a daggone counter app. It's like a free app off the iPad.
That's what I'm saying. It's pretty available, right?
Here it is. It's just like a counter. That's all it is.
So
it's like,
all those different colors represent what?
My faith. This is my faith. Am I doing what a guy who loves Jesus said he's going to do? Am I resisting temptation? This is my youngest daughter, middle daughter, oldest daughter. This is my bride.
And every one of those numbers is
it's attributable to a rep.
It's a rep.
It's a rep.
One time that you did something that was on your list of what people who have a plan and those things do.
And by the way, who informed that list is really important too, right? Like my bride informed the list for her, my bride in the Bible. And I'm not letting, this is where allies are so important. Like, if daggone, El Chapo informs your list and you get those reps, it ain't gonna work well for you.
Yeah.
So who are you letting build these reps that you're massing 10,000 repetitions in towards these things?
And this is why, right? If you're going to do special forces, if you're going to be a special man, if you're going to be the right kind of dad, a dad that wins, let's just take advantage of some of the languages around the SEAL community because, rightly or wrongly, I still think that, one of the places that things are still done with biblical principles, when you look in sometimes, and I think it's less than it used to be, but in our academies, in our military, it's, some people, I used to say anyway, it's the last meritocracy. Some people begin to doubt that, but let's not go there for a second. What I really want to say at
the battlefield level, it's as close as anywhere else in the world. Because the battlefield suffers fools poorly.
Yes.
Right. So, and biblical principles have endured thousands of years of battle. Right. So, in these institutions, they may be compromised in some ways, but where the boot meets the door and the bad guy, biblical principles still hold true.
So let's talk about allies for a second, because the biblical principle here is the companion of fools will suffer harm, but he who walks with wise men will be wise.
Mm-hmm.
Within the military community, and Frank, whether also in sports, right?
Yeah.
You want to make sure, are you going to do your job? Because I don't care how good I do blocking, the right end if I'm the left tackle. Right? How good I do throwing the right pass, you better run the right route.
Yeah.
You better catch it. So you got to have the right allies around you. You better have guys that when you clear room and cover your part, the guy behind you is doing his job.
Well, the faithful are the wounds of a friend, right? You got to be willing to be offended.
And so one of the things, though, that within your community is you're not afraid, right? It's not a sign of a lack of kindness to push guys out.
Oh, you're saving their lives. You know, like I remember when guys would think about quitting during Hoetzer, I'm thinking about quitting. I'm like, he quit, that won't quit. And because I love you too much to hate you one day. And there's something that you would rather die than quit it doing, and America needs you doing that.
So go back to that though, because like I think this is one of the things that happens. I see it all the time within Christendom, right? We think it's compassion and kindness to kind of slow the whole team down to the lowest common denominator, right?
Well, the bad guy loves it when we do that.
Yeah, the bad guy loves it.
Evil loves appeasement and accommodation and apathy.
I want to tell you what,
metaphorically and literally.
Cut that.
Yeah.
Right? Say that again.
Yeah.
Appeasement loves
apathy.
The enemy loves appeasement.
Yeah.
Right?
And the evil loves apathy, appeasement, and accommodation.
And I'm telling you, one of the reasons that sometimes, I'm hard to be around is people go, Todd, all you want to do is just excel still more, excel still more. I go, hey, that's because I know I'm in a war.
Yeah.
And I go, it's for me.
Right.
It's not because I'm frustrated with you. I know I got to stay on my A game.
Yeah.
Or I'm either dead or irrelevant.
Right.
And I don't want to be either.
Right. And in training, to make it through, you got to be willing to be as hard on each other as the trainers are on you.
So when a guy was slowing down or looking to tap out or ring the bell, right? And they said, I'm quitting.
Yeah. For me,
they didn't want you to go save him and talk him out of it.
If you were slowing down, that wasn't a big deal because I was slow too. I was back there with you. But if you were struggling physically to make it, I got you. The minute you verbalized thinking about quitting, because the line between thinking about quitting and quitting is that thin. And if you're thinking about quitting and we're in this chaotic, ruthless environment, but it's still controlled. I mean, we're still in a controlled environment. These instructors are provisioning for our safety and all these other things. Then you're going to be thinking about quitting when none of those controls are there, and you might quit then, and we can't afford that.
And again, let me just bring it back because this is, very few of us are going to have the thrill of being a warrior in the military sense. You're done with those days. Right? You're not going to do that again.
I mean, but Red Dawns could always happen, but ideally not, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll find each other. We've been on the phone late at night when things are not crazy in Dallas. Where we meeting, right? But that aside, the application for us is like, you say some stuff sometimes, Clint, and it's so second nature to you, but it's so good, I don't want to miss it. But like the line between thinking and doing and thinking and quitting is razor thin. So this is why, as men, we've got to take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. Because the second I think that compromise is not that big a deal, the second I think no one else is really going for it to be excellent, is the second I am compromising, giving myself an excuse to not be excellent, and then I'm either going to get killed or be irrelevant.
I'd go on. I'd add to that, and I would tell you the line between thinking about quitting and quitting is visible even to the person who's thinking it. Because there's a physiology to performance. Mm-hmm. There's a point in time where monkey brain will take over. We were wired in such a way to kind of stay alive. And there's times where I've seen guys, like when you interview guys that have quit like this really, really brutal training, and they're super talented. They have these just incredibly genetic gifts. They're very talented. When they talk about quitting, it's fascinating. Because a lot of times they'll tell you, it was like I was watching myself quit in the third person. Well, the only other performance state where that exists is when you're in the flow. Like when you're like, well, I was watching myself. When Bo Jackson talks about watching himself play. So that inverse performance state is what happens. And so I would tell you that, like, if you think about quitting, there's parts of the human machine, they're going to be like, all right, he said we could quit. And so just not even registering that, you got to keep it so far out of your mind, right? And for me, the fact that it could register in you made me wonder if this is what you should be doing without even a sense of judgment. Maybe this is a part of you saying this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. Because if you're doing this for the wrong reasons, it'll eventually catch up to you.
Okay, so in other words, guys who just want the trident slapped on them, guys who want people to think, wow, you're a SEAL.
I just want to prove something to my dad. I want to be like, that's not enough because you got to want to do this because you want to do this. To the extent you know what it is, it's got to be about you wanting to do that.
Okay, so
because no one else is going to be there with you when you're getting shot at.
And I think this is where we really lose women, because they go, you know why you're not doing this? Because you really don't want to do this. You don't love me.
That's right.
Right? You were doing this because it was fun to have an engagement and a wedding and a girl in your arm that was young and cute, and you just want to go find some other girl that's young and cute.
Good
You want
honor
to
for-
love me.
Good honor for telling him the truth, and bad that this is the first person that told him that, right? I mean, like I remember I tell guys, hey, should I marry her or break up with her? I'm like, well, don't marry her. Like if you can ask those questions with a comma in that sentence,
that's right.
She deserves better.
For sure.
I asked Amy to marry me on the second date. And she's like, can we go on another date? I'm like, yep, but I'm going to keep asking you to marry me till you call Popo or you say yes. One of the two. Like, I was done.
Who's Popo?
I was the police. I was done.
Popo.
Like,
I thought it was like a distant uncle she had.
No, that guy's terrifying. He's Armenian. I'd rather
Don't
call police.
Popo.
Don't call Popo. I'd rather call police than Amy's Armenian family. They all drive Lincoln Town cars with Pirelli racing tires on them. Scary.
All right.
But like for me, there was no debate. I met Amy. I was like, done. Right? Like,
but lots of guys do that then. Lots of guys sign up to be a SEAL and they get on that beach and they're like, done.
We say it all the time. Like, you want to be a SEAL or you want to do what SEALs do or just be a SEAL? Like, everybody wants to be a frogman on Friday. Right? But that's on all these maps, the ball field, the battlefield, the boardroom, breakfast table. Like, everybody wants to have a Super Bowl ring, but no one wants to work 10,000 hours over the course of a year to be a good football player.
Okay, so
right?
so question. When you said they've done a deep study on guys, some guys who are more talented, who maybe look the part of a SEAL and aren't going to have to lean forward.
More often than not,
they're the ones
guys
who
who don't make it.
Right. And so you said they've done a deep study on them. And one of the things is they played with quitting. Was there anything else?
Well, some of it was what traumatic significant event have they endured prior to this? Is this the first hardest thing they've ever been through? And if the first hardest thing you've ever been through is in a place where you have no margin, you might not make it. I remember when I was in the NFL, there was a guy who mentally was just destroyed because it was the first time he wasn't the fastest guy in the room. There was no character. I mean, I told the coaches, I'm like, listen, this isn't a character issue. This is an exposure issue. He was in a scenario where he was never not the fastest.
Yeah.
And so his brain is trying to figure out what's going on.
Am I any good anymore?
Like, give him some time, because this is the first time he's ever had the first time I had to figure out I wasn't the fastest guy in the room was in third grade when I was picked again last for kickball. I had fake parachute pants. My mom bought me cheap fake parachute, and I was running, and I swear they caught on fire. My nylon melted because my chubby little legs were running together, coming around third base. Like, I've just never been the fastest. So as a matter of fact, I get nervous when I find myself the best at anything.
Yeah,
because I'm like, oh, it's a trap. I'm either missing something or I'm not trying hard enough. But what we found with hyper talented people, and this is the issue I have when I talk to parents about making it easy on their kids. It's like, hey, here's the math. Easy now, hard later. Hard now, easy later. The brain, we have these amazing brain science studies now, like the Center for Brain Health down at the University of Texas Dallas. It's incredible. But we can image the brain in a way that we've never been able to image it before. And what it's telling us is the brain, in God's infinite wisdom, the brain lacks a stimulus for growth based on success. It's not there. You don't grow based on success. You only grow based on fear, pain, adversity, and challenge. Because the brain uses more calories than any other part of the body. So it's like a lion. Lions do lion stuff when they have to, but not until. The brain doesn't do its thing. It doesn't grow until it has to as a function of survival and success. So when we're making things easier for our kids, we're making it harder for them later. I promise you that, right? And I think, that my mom and dad were never easy on me. Like my mom was committed to helping me understand rejection faster than anybody else could. I remember I called her when I was at the Naval Academy. She laughs at this. My mom, I'm not throwing my mom under the bus. She'd tell you this right now if she were here. I said, Mom, I'm going to start for 4 years at the Naval Academy. And she said, they might cut you.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, thanks. But again, faithful.
And she was telling you that, because you need to know that there's a world out there that is wanting you to perform, right? Because
100%.
It does matter who your allies are. And if you can't perform, Clint, you're not going to be on the team. Okay, and I'm going to just throw this in there, because one of the things is I led like a church staff. People would sometimes, you would find them, they go, well, I thought you loved me. I thought we were family. And I said, you know what? The church is a family, but this staff is a team.
That's right.
And you're going to do what you need to do to be on the team. I'm going to love you when you're not, I don't love you because you're on the team, but if you're going to be on the team, you got to perform.
And love doesn't feel like love sometimes.
No, man.
A lot of times it does.
I'm going to help you be what you're intended to be. And listen, God created you to be a success somewhere. So part of my job is to tell you, you're not being successful here.
Yeah.
I think that's not just true then of the team. It's also true of the family. We don't get rid of you, but we come up with a plan. And if you don't want the plan, then you're the one that's kicking yourself out of the family, not me.
It's a trope in every movie that we see. Daniel-san did not think Miyagi loved him. because he's painting his fences. And all this stuff. Like, every movie we've ever seen, the coach that you didn't think loved you till you realize he was getting you ready for. So, and this is why the Bible tells us not to trust our feelings. And the heart is deceitful, man. Like, if I followed my feelings, I certainly wouldn't be here talking to you right now.
Well,
with any amount of credibility.
And how many times do you hear me say this? Feelings are, they're real.
They're real, but they're not reasons.
But they're not reliable.
Yeah.
You can't, and so we don't suppress our feelings, right? We don't act like we don't have feelings.
Yeah, we can't suppress
But
them,
man, we better
real.
not let our feelings lead us.
That's right.
Right? And so, but even going back a little bit, just when we talk about, let me just, when we talk about like how you care for family.
Yeah.
Right? And you go, listen, I'm going to care for you as a human. You don't have to be a SEAL for me to love you, but this is what SEALs do. I think that's true of Christians. And I just want to say, listen, man, I don't want to make you think you're a follower of Christ when you're not following Christ. And you can tell me all day long that I'm judgmental. And I love the statement. I mean, A.W. Tozer is the one who said it, that the church will be at the height of its heresy when they begin to call obedience legalism.
Yeah.
And I'd have guys tell me all the time, well, Todd, that's legalistic. I mean, that's not legalistic. It's just right.
Right.
It's just true.
This isn't my metric, by the way. I'm not making this up.
Yeah.
I can point to page, scripture, verse where it says this, right?
Yeah.
So like if it were my wisdom, refute it, push back against it all day long. But it's not my wisdom. It's not my standards I'm trying to help you stay with.
So we know, like with kids, every kid that is being shepherded well at some point thinks their parents hate them, and they definitely hate their parents.
100%.
Right?
100%. If you're doing it right, your kids are going to be mad at you at some point in time. But you'd rather be mad at you when they're 12 than when they're 25 because you didn't tell them the truth.
That's exactly right, man. I tell parents all the time, man, if your job, because that's one of the things in how to be a successful parent. One is have a plan. 2 is be present. 3 is be a parent. This is not a popularity contest. You're not running for mayor. You're not trying to get voted student council.
Yeah.
Right? You're not trying to be their best friend. You are their dad. You're their mom, and it's a much higher calling than being their buddy.
Yeah.
Right? And so
yeah, I mean, that's one of the things I miss so much about my dad is not being able to tell him thank you for the things he told me I didn't want to hear when I had him. And I remember we'd have these conversations in the hospital. I remember he'd come home one time and he just said, go up to your room, I'll be up there in a minute. And he'd come up there and spank me, and we were in the hospital, and I said, Dad, how'd you know? He goes, what do you mean? I said, well, every once in a while you just come home, like go up to your room, and and he's like, I didn't. I just assumed you did something wrong that day that you thought you got away with. And I was like, man, every time I go up to my room, it's like, man, how do you know? Because I did. Every day I did something worth getting punished on, right? But it was that righteous fear that pointed me in the right direction. I'm like, listen, how do I say this in a way that makes sense? You can't choose whether or not your kids hate you, but you can choose when they do. And I'd rather my kids hate me when they're young than hate me when they're older, because I told them I was trying to make them feel good that moment. Like, easy now, hard later.
Yeah.
I promise you, hard now, easy later.
I'm going to be a parent. I mean, listen, I had 6 of them.
Yeah.
The boys were much more articulate and eager to express their dissatisfaction with me. The girls kind of closed up and fell out, but the boys, young lions would go, hey, as soon as I grow a mane, I'm taking you out.
Yeah.
Because you're
100%.
And I would just go, well.
And then they get older and they're like, nah, you're right.
Right. I say, well, why you don't have a mane?
Yeah.
Right? I am the man.
That's right.
And I'm your dad.
That's right.
And I love you enough to let you hate me.
Yeah.
Because, that was the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Again, just because I have so many friends, because of you and because of other guys that, because we let them. That was one of the things in the ministry, Clint, I want men to be what they were created to be.
You know what's interesting?
Sin keeps you short of the glory of God. And I'm trying to let you experience the glory once. It's much better than a trident to be a man who represents the Trinity the way God wants you to. But what were you going to say?
Here's what's fascinating about our community in particular, the SEAL community in particular. All the officers and enlisted guys go through the same training. Day 1, week 1, you all do the same stuff. There's no different path for officers and enlisted. The enlisted run the training. They are the guardians of the community. And I can't tell you how many times, like I remember my first chief, and he's the one I talk about a lot. I hated him. Like, he put me through hell week. I wanted to rip his face off. And then I remember we ran into each other at the command, and he's like, are you still mad at me? I said, yeah. I said, we got some stuff to work out. And he goes, you want to know why I was hard on you? And I was like, why? Because I was an officer, because I played football at the Naval. He's like, nope, I was hard on you because I figured I'd probably enjoy working for you one day. And I was like, wait, really? Like, hold on.
Well, you know what I thought you were going to say? I was hard on you because I wanted to save your life, because I loved you. Because I knew if I made it hard here, you were going to be ready.
Well, that was part of it. But another part of it is, like, as the enlisted instructor, is like, if you let a guy through training, you're agreeing to go to war with him later. You don't stay in training forever. You're in training for 2 or 3 years, and you roll back out of the community. So there is an urgency in our training that acknowledges we may go to war together one day.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of the reasons they're so hard, and they're so hard in particular on officers because, like, man, if I let you through, I'm agreeing to follow your orders or let someone I love follow your orders too. So they double down on us.
I'm going to compromise my leadership, which I tell parents this all the time, right? You are raising your rulers.
Yeah. And at the time, it makes you mad, but as you get older, you realize what a privilege it was to have men guarding our community so fiercely and ensuring you're capable of sitting in the seat you're going to sit in for a little while, right? And it's interesting, the instructors I was most mad at are the instructors I grew to respect and love the most as teammates and peers. And oh, by the way, if you're a chief in the SEAL team, you're never working for an officer anyway. Like structurally from a rank perspective, like, yeah, you may, but you know, Lieutenant JG telling a chief what to do. He's like, hey, I think we should do this. Is that cool, Chief? Can we do that? I was like, did I spell that right? What do I do? So the whole with and for thing, I don't mean to get in that dynamic. The majority of the special operations community are really senior enlisted led because they have the most experience, right?
What do you wish that made the SEALs what they were and are? What do you wish that was like that in the church that it's not?
That is one of the things I love. Like, I love that there was an attrition process. Like, you're a member or you're not. Like, you got to declare it. There has to be standards and saying like, hey, we love you, keep coming here, but membership means this. And anytime you can't, I love standards, and I love standards not because they're punitive and not because they draw distinctions, but if everything's okay, nothing's okay, right?
You are what you tolerate. You get what you expect, right? And
I think leaders in the church need to be okay with offending because, you know, everything I could probably 90% of what I learn in life has been brought to me by offense, meaning I've been offended when someone said it, and I'm like, oh, maybe you cared more about the mission than me in that moment, and I'm going to thank you for it later, right? But
I got to tell you, Clint,
this whole everybody's okay, everybody's like love. If everybody feels, I got to be careful how I say this, but if everybody feels loved all the time, then they're not really getting loved. Because sometimes love is punching in the soup coolers with some truth that you don't want to hear.
Love does not rejoice in unrighteousness.
No.
Which means if there's a standard that's right and you're not meeting it, love's going to point that out to you. And people are going to call it, well, you're judgmental, you're performance-based. I'm like, no, I'm not performance-based, I'm reality-based.
Well, you remember the Penn and Teller video where, you know, Penn or Teller, I can't remember which one's which, but he talks about how...
If you ask him,
yeah,
one of them will speak, the other one won't.
You're the one that talks. But it was the one, he was talking about how a guy that went to a show twice was proselytizing to him, and he gave him a Bible.
Yeah.
And you could tell he's so profoundly affected, and he goes, listen, if you believe this, and how much you got to hate someone
to not share
this with them, if you believe it the way you believe it.
Yeah, man.
And my deal's like, man, I love you too much to have you hate me one day. And
this is why I think the church is the condition that it's in. Is we have,
and it's why the nation is in the condition it is, because of a church that, not every church, but a lot of times in the church community, appeasement, accommodation, sets the tone.
Well, and you told me, I remember when you came to me and said, hey, Todd, you know, I know you ask me questions or you're curious about the Special Forces community because, like, I forget how old my kids were when that Buds 234 came out. It was one of the very first time you kind of saw inside of that world. And really the SEALs before that were this mystery. You didn't really even know about them.
Yeah.
In the last 16 years, what's interesting is you probably have even more guys who want to be that because now being a SEAL is akin to being a professional athlete.
Yeah.
And everybody thinks they want it. Like you said, they all want to be do you want to, what was the phrase you used? Do you want to be a SEAL?
You want to be a SEAL or do you want to do what SEALs do?
That's right. And what SEALs do is they suffer. They discipline themselves for the sake of others. And they're supposed to be quiet and silent and not seen, signing autographs, writing books, and all that different stuff. Same is true with a faithful Christian.
Right.
And one of the things that I see again and again, I see compromise, I see condescension, I see lowering down the pace. And when you look at Jesus, he's much more of a chief, much more of a SEAL instructor than he is this pastor that just kind of says, I just want you to like me.
Yeah, he's not putting a Band-Aid on something.
No, because sometimes his followers come to him, John 6, right?
Yeah.
And they go, Rabbi, a lot of these things you're saying are hard to understand and difficult. And he goes, well, you want to go with him?
Yeah. I mean,
ring the bell, man.
Yeah,
Walk.
And that's the whole deal. Like, that's where the allies thing became so important to me is I'm not good enough for you to not tell me what I need to know when I need to know it.
Yeah.
Because by the time I realize I need to know it, I may not have, I don't have the margin of talent to overcome that delta. Like, I got to know now, right? Because, and I think that we need to love and lead each other that way. And again, that's why faithful are the wounds of a friend. You know, conversations, the hardest conversation I've had are with people that love me the most. Tell me the least what I wanted to hear, and I'm better for it all.
Yep.
You know?
Well, let's do this, man. You and I, we both have the gift of gab,
We do
right?
this for a
We
little
would have a
while.
tendency to talk for a long time. So maybe we do this again, pick up some topics we didn't cover. Folks can, shoot in and say, man, I wish you guys would talk more about this. But, just in closing, one of the things that I remember you said to me, because this is good for guys like me. If I look back, I kind of have a regret that I didn't have a military moment in my life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I remember, I think at one point we had that conversation. You said, let me just tell you something.
I told you I'm glad you didn't.
Because
you were here getting good at this when I needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like listen, if everybody was on the battlefield, I wouldn't have had any peers on the boardroom that I was comfortable listening to as I came. This is the map I'm on right now. Mm-hmm. And I desperately need men I love and respect to be great at the boardroom, great at the breakfast. To get great at the boardroom while I'm doing good at the battlefield means you're going to be able to help me when I get here. And I will tell you the most scared I've ever been, and you've heard me say this before, and I kind of processed this with you and some of the others, the most scared I've ever been is when I left the ball field and the battlefield and I came to the boardroom. Because I knew where the high ground was and how to get to it on the ball field and the battlefield. And in the boardroom, man, the high ground's elusive and the hoar ground's and the boardroom's nebulous, and you can end up chasing the wrong people, and now you feel like you're that much more behind because you just found someone who's good at the boardroom but not at the breakfast table.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm forever grateful for stumbling into that Bible study on Ecclesiastes with a bunch of guys who were successful going, hey, Solomon's right. I was like, oh, all right, well, I'm not going to chase that now.
Yep.
But for my relationship with you and all these other guys, but we got to be willing to ask questions we don't want to hear the answers to, and we got to be willing to action on the answers we get given.
Well, I remember when you told me too, and we've seen this with other guys that down there at Higher Ground, and when we talk to them, these guys are warriors, and I think every guy is intended to be a warrior. Now, we're not all going to get to go on the beach at Coronado and train, right, or in Virginia Beach and train.
But we don't need everybody to do that.
Right. We don't need everybody to do that. But everybody, the guys that are at Coronado Beach and Virginia Beach, they all want to be, I got to be successful in life, right? And when you die, I'm telling you, you don't want somebody just to slap a trident on your coffin. You want somebody to say you live the way the Trinity wanted you to live, the only opinion that matters.
100%.
Right? So it's going to be what's inside of the soul and how you lived, and not just how you lived out there as a soldier. And I think what I remember you saying, and other guys have told me this, Todd, you taught me how to be a warrior in the place that it matters. And you know what it did for me?
It's the longest map.
It's the longest map,
yeah.
Right? And I think it gave a guy like me who wished I'd had that experience. You just said, hey, Todd, you need to be a chief that helps me be as great in this arena as those guys help me in that arena. And I'm just going to tell you, if you're a leader out there, if you're a guy and you're given that responsibility, there are warriors out there that are looking for men to call them to something more, right? That want to help them experience that life of significance and success in the longest map. And frankly, the only map we're gonna be judged at how we live everywhere. But if you are a guy that just narrows your little life focus to, I'm celebrated by the NFL or celebrated by the military, that leaves you so empty.
I will introduce you to titans that have been on the high ground of the ball from the battlefield. And for those that got there at the expense of the breakfast table, you're going to hear the same thing over and over again. It wasn't worth it.
It wasn't worth it.
I wish I would have done something differently. I'm spending the rest of my life trying to seek restoration and reconciliation on the breakfast table because I mortgaged that and for the pursuit of this. And I mean, I'll show you all those guys, and they'll all tell you, it's like, man, if I could do it all again, the map I'd get right is the breakfast table. And almost all of them commit the rest of their lives to restoration and reconciliation on the breakfast table. And that should tell you something.
So we want to be men who have a high call, high commitment, but listen, we do have high compassion. So different than the SEAL community, which when you ring that bell and put your little pot down there and walk away, you're done. It's not that way with the breakfast table.
No.
Like you can quit, and we can go, okay, are you ready? Like we're going to keep looping around,
man,
and we're going to say, whenever you're ready.
I'll tell you this: as a guy who doesn't have his father, there's not a boy on the planet that doesn't want to have a restored relationship with their father.
Yeah,
it is never too late to start being a good dad.
Yeah.
It is never too late. It may be work, but it is never too late to start
You might
being
have
a good
raised your
dad.
kids, they're gone and they hate you. It's never too late.
It's never too late to be a good
dad.
dad. So, I don't care what they tell you. There's a hole in every boy or girl's soul that's just waiting for their dad.
Man.
And it may not be what you want it to be, but I promise you it is. You always have time to become a dad.
Amen. And if we can help you, right? Just there'll be some way we'll put it on here in the lower third or whatever. Reach out to us. We want to help you, right? Be a faithful rep of the Trinity, right? And to be a faithful soul, not just a trident and a faithful soldier. So I don't want to just wear that out, but I'm just telling you, man, come, let us help you. Come and take what God intends for you, man. Clint, it's always fun, brother.
That was fun, man. Thank you. I hope I used all these words correctly. I went on a dare on a couple of them. I was like, I'm going to adventure a little bit. Multi-syllable. See what happens.
Right. Let's do it again, bro.
Right, man, thank you,
I love
brother.
being here
Love
with
you
you.
too, brother.
All right. See you.